podcast. I'm Matthias.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I call ourselves writers, which means we've actually never seen a Word document before.
Exactly, so we're doing a challenge to fix that. Each week we set a timer for 30 minutes. Our goal is to write a complete short story using 3 of 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read the stories, and then we talk about what we learned in writing them. We finish off by talking about stories sent in by you listeners.
Yes, we're simply here to help you do the right thing. A Doof Media Production. Sorry, there's so much phlegm in my throat right now.
There really has been a lot of phlegm around here recently.
I know.
So like a really healthy amount of phlegma.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, every single last soul that I know is trying their best not to get sick while they're also getting sick, so.
Yes. Before we jump into the meat of the podcast, I'd just like to say that my last week has been hell. So that's just what's going on in my world.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that hell?
Well, I've started a new job, and so hey, if my employers are listening, you guys are great. However, it certainly is a lot of work, and I'm just like adapting to it, you know?
Yeah. Because I mean, like, I'm pretty sure there's so much that you need to learn on this new job.
Yeah, so I'm just adapting to that. I've been losing a bit of sleep because, you know, there's classes, there's work, there's this, which is very important to me.
And then there's essays.
There's a student org I'm a leader of, and it's not like I can do that less because I'm the leader. So like, if I stop, everyone else stops. So it's been a lot. So
yeah.
But regardless, I'm powering through.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to feel rested on 4 hours of sleep.
Ooh, that's good. As my mom would say, is that you're putting too much on your plate, so you should go ahead and eat your greens.
Is that how she said it?
Yeah, very similarly.
I'm sure. What about you, Jarvis?
I've been fine, just trying to fight off sick mostly. And yeah, just really feeling the blues of having only creative writing classes, because yes, I do love writing, but I have so many like essays that I have to do and so many things that I have to read, to where it's just kind of been a struggle of finding that time, along with also trying to write on the personal things that I want to do and beat Dark Souls 3 for the 3rd time. There's so much stuff. So many things that I need.
I mean, you can't cut any of those, you know? Like, it's how do you balance, you know, if you have to do everything the whole time.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, in other news, there's some amazing doof stuff going on.
Yeah.
Of course, the biggest thing for us is that the results are in, baby.
Yeah.
The results
Finally.
are in.
And what a result they are.
What a result they are. The Doof the Right Thing contest, voting closed today, as of recording. And so the 24 submissions by some lovely people were sorted. They were voted on. I know, while not like every single voter read every single piece, like we had a system where every piece was got roughly the same amount of attention. Like, people were supposed to read them in a random order, according to a website that we linked.
Yeah.
And they were able to vote on more than one at the same time. And I was super impressed with all of the submissions. But without further ado, without keeping you all in suspense, let's announce the winners.
All right, drum roll, please.
But the winners of the first quarterly Doof the Right Thing contest are as follows. Tied for first place are Calinero 985 with Man in the Moon, and Kippos 21 with Fear. And then second place, Generous Nat with Spooky, Halloween, Pumpkin, and Candy. Now normally we would do first, second, and third, but obviously first was tied, and so considering we have 3 prizes, we'll be giving them out to those 3, the first, second, and third. And then if we were to have an actual third place, it was a 5-way tie. So just
Wow.
for honorable mentions for falling the actual third place, let's go and announce them. So tied for third place with honorable mentions are Godly Form Fluffy Transformed by Niall Supernum, The Arrow Flew by Jake R., The Dubious Merits of Sycophancy by Captain Rhino, The Glow by Stuck in Reddit Factory, and Vault T-P7NC3 by Kyrgyzstan.
Nice.
So congratulations to all those people, and of course to everyone else as well. Thank you to everyone else for submitting. Let me actually go ahead and just say the names of everyone else who submitted. You guys did amazing. Everyone got multiple votes. I think every single one on some level was like deserving of winning, and I was super impressed with everyone.
Yeah, and then also just the fact of doing it in itself, like taking something that you've done prior and taking it through the full writing process. So thank you very much to everyone that submitted, and even those that simply thought of it. Like, it's crazy that we're doing this and actually having this sort of competition, and it's even crazier to see that we got such a huge turnout.
Yeah, and you know, it's like it's good for you, right? So
Yeah.
I'm actually really interested in seeing, but I'm interested in hearing what people's processes and feelings were on it, because I know we didn't post it in a Reddit thread, right? So it's hard to tell exactly what people's reflections would have been on it.
Yeah.
In next week's threads, I'm gonna post a comment that is asking for your feedback. So go ahead and reply to that comment there, and so for the episode 45 thread, and then let me know how you guys let us know how you guys thought the contest went. Is there anything you might want different, or what you might do differently? So, but okay, so congratulations and to the winners, and thank you to everyone who submitted, which were Again by Torchide, Apocrypha by Synths, Countdown by Beamer R, Details by Ace of Sword, Facets by Torch Salesman, Godly Form Fluffy Transform by Niall Supernum, Herald by Air Rack Killinat, Hurt Stage Necessary by Elinia, Jackson Stretch by Zakatigi, Man in the Moon by Calinero985, Nymphaeum by Sarah Penguin, Petty Heists by Sieve M, Spooky Halloween Pumpkin Candy by Generous Nat, The Arrow Flew by Jake R, The Boxing Ring by David Z, The Dubious Merits of Sycophancy by Captain Rhino, The Glow by Stuck in Reddit Factory, The Mountain by Sean E, 3 Man, 1 Cell by Meteora22, Transitions by Kausubalu, Fear by Kippos21, Untitled Number 1 by TVC Grid, Witness by Alex S, and Vault T-P7NC3 by Kyrgyzstan. So thank you to everyone so much. We really appreciate it and hope that you participate in the next one. But yeah, I'm super excited, and it seems like it was a really good contest. On the Discord where people were voting, there was a lot of talk and discussion about the stories and people celebrating things, and we were really, really happy to hear that and to see that. So, so if you guys have any feedback, post in that comment on next week's thread.
Exactly, and please keep writing with us.
So that's the stuff that we have for the beginning of the episode. Now let's get into the actual what the episode's normally about.
All right, cool.
So, what were the words this week, Jarvis?
The words for this week are weary, falsify, silly, and nonchalant. But yes, those are our words for this week. And Matthias, how did you choose to use them?
So I used all but weary, actually. I think they were all, well, weary was pretty easy to use, although it is also very evocative. It's not like it was a cop out or whatever.
Yeah,
like it was relevant. I wrote it, as usual, a little bit last minute, even though I told myself I'd do it earlier.
Yeah, but
of course, with that busy week that I was losing sleep,
we always do that.
Yeah.
The main thing is that you did it in the first place.
Well, it's interesting. Well, maybe not interesting to start word, but I was busy all week, including this up to writing it. So it's like I would have lost the 30 minutes somewhere regardless, right? So it's like I probably should have just done it earlier, even if I felt like I didn't have enough time, because it's like I wouldn't have had more time later anyway, right?
True, but like if you're thinking of it like that, then you could say like, yeah, I could have wrote it when I was 15 because I had 30 minutes then. So But I think the
okay.
key is that throughout this busy week, you mustered up the courage and the vigor to actually go out and do the right thing. So I will personally commend you on that, especially since it's hard to like really find that time, especially when you have 17 other things going on. So,
Well, right. Which ones did you use?
for me, I used all of them besides Nonchalant. At first, I did plan on using it, but it just didn't really work its way into the story, which is fine. I mean, I used the other things, so I did do the right thing. And this week, the story that I wrote, I'm not entirely sure about it. I would say it's more of just something that I wanted to write, not taking it really that seriously. So, yeah, I don't know. I look forward to seeing how people think about it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess we should just jump into it.
Yeah, sure. We can roll right in. The title of my story is Queen. The crane dropped the container down in Unit 7-24. 7 up, 24 across for non-dock workers, and came to a halt. At this time, the docks of Mansville was a skeleton crew. The view of the Dawn Sea and far-off smokestacks was lovely in the morning, but work is work, and dock work is no exception. Before the rooster crowed, the weary crane-op clocked out. He was sickly, drooling, leaking snot all over the controls. So a nap before the next shipment wouldn't be too silly of an idea. So he dropped Unit 7-25 and left, boxing in the red, candy-covered paint job of 7-24. It stood out against the dull and dim containers round it, like a chipped tooth or rusty cog. It's also the only one with people in it. The container's insides was pristine and tiled, similar to a door-floor bathroom, only instead of stalls and shower heads, flimsy iron bars and red pulsating dampeners took their place. 3 on one side and 3 on the other, the container was split into 6 cells, 4 of which were vacant. On the opposite corner of the container, the 2 prisoners wait for their time, the fluorescent glow of the lights making it hard to sleep, hard to think. Perfect for containing Queen. Finally caught him. Queen. A fairly handsome, curly, white-haired African-American science experiment that created the U.S. government's trump card in the war against enhanced crime. If his actions were made public, he'd be a hero. But a hero can't come from a petri dish. He wore his best studs before he was captured. A pearly white button-down with black button, matching pants, and a bunch of silver chains connected to a metal belt that doubles as a comm device. Disabled, of course. Across the container was his partner and caretaker, Fabiola. On sight, she'd remind you of a young librarian. Rounded glasses, cracked now. Black trousers connected to suspender, connected to a white blouse. She wasn't handling captivity well. Jittered like she's 4 cups in and couldn't catch her breath to save her life. Queen, you up? Yeah, I'm up. Queen wiped his eyes, snapping out of his tiredness. Stood up and grabbed the bars with 2 hands. You alright, Fab? What if they don't come for us? What if they just make us sit here till we starve? Her voice was broken, thoughts roaming round her head and escalating the severity of their situation. Queen sighed, understood her worry, but this not being his first rodeo, he was calm. Even more than that, he was bored, just ready for the show to start. We won't starve. They'll keep us here for a day, maybe 2, but I'd put money on Pond walking in, spilling his plan, and releasing us in the woods somewhere. Where Queen expected ease, Fab was sent into hysterics. Stood up and placed her face along the bars. The woods? All these guys think the same. Old models would receive some sort of validation by hunting me down, yeah? Especially with these dampeners active, I won't be able to do shit for an hour or so. At that point, a baby with a pistol could take me. Queen smiled. But we'll be fine, Fab. Don't worry. Fab let out a sigh, still not believing him. Queen saw this and started thinking, "You have any gum?" The next day, the container doors unlatched and opened. 4x4 black and blue soldiers hoofed it inside, guns pointed at Queen. Behind them, a man dressed in a similar fashion stepped in. He was older, maybe 40s, with a chiseled jaw hidden under a salt and pepper beard. When the thought of a seasoned soldier hits the mind, you'd most likely think of Pon. His face never smiles. Battle scars and age lines battered his face, and his hair is a few years removed from a buzz cut. The only sound in the container was the man's cane. Its deep black stem struck the ground with a metallic tink and brandished a marble pawn piece at its handle. The cane could double as a staff. In fact, many times the cold porcelain pawn has bashed Queen's brains in and caused thousands of dollars worth of damage. He went by Pon, a first-gen telepath whose reach goes just beyond his skin. Weak compared to Queen, but smarter than him too. Pon crossed the container, ignoring Fabiola for the normal she is, and stepped right in front of Queen. The 24 hours of dehydration and starvation shows. His clothes wrinkled and sweat through. The once reflective chrome belt was worn and scraped, as if it was bashed against the bars all night. He stood up to meet Pon, face to face with his obsession. The lovely reunion forced Pon to brandish his crooked teeth. Caught behind enemy lines, huh, Queen? Still haven't discovered lotion, huh, Pon? He laughed it off, wagging a finger at Queen. Glad to see you're having a good time. Fabiola, darling. Hyperventilating in the corner, Fab managed a, "Yes?" "You comfortable?" "Yes." Pon slams the floor twice with his cane, each activating one of the 4 soldiers to huddle her cage like animals ready for a feast. One figure unlocked the lock as the other batted the cage with the butt of its gun. Up and at him. Fab lost her shit. The lack of oxygen to her brain turned the soldiers into twisted fantasies in hellfire. They were out to get her, drag her down to a cramped hole with no light, no air. And when they grabbed her, all she could do was scream and cry as they dragged her out the container and threw her over. In the time that happened, Queen squatted in the corner and conjured up a copy of Snow Crab by Neil Stevenson, picked up where he left off. The smile Pon had as the deed was carried out fell into disappointment. Really, Queen? Queen flips the pages and fixes the glasses he didn't have before. If I had a penny for every companion you've killed, flip, I'd be eating the best jawbreaker in the world right now. Flip, flip, flip. You aren't reading. Queen cracked a smile and folded his glasses. Ah, but I am, Pon. He held his dumb little smile until Pon got it. Looked up at the dampener that's been dead for an hour now. A huge piece of gum was stuck to it. The gum itself wrapped around a sliver of iron. The mass was tied up in string that trails down to an almost out-of-reach outlet, blackened by shock. Between the seconds, it all rushed back to Queen. Avenues of thought and possibility falsified by the dampener filter once again back to his core. The air in the container condensed. Queen blew a hole in the dock, straight into the dawn sea, along with the iron bars and containers. But they still remained 7 stories up, suspended in air like an ex machina from a Greek play. Queen kept the bars between him and Pon, fired the soldiers in the sea shallow enough for rescue, even caught Fab at the last minute, not quick enough to save her, but he caught her. Should have never left, Pon. You're outclassed now. In the air, Pon found his hand to his cane, twisted the marble pawn open. The sound rang out with a fiery anger, shook the air down to the atom, hitting Queen like a truck. The disruption sent them to the ground. Pond, sticking a perfect 3-point landing on what's left of the docks as Queen smacks the water, knocked out cold, and sunk to the bottom. Sirens weren't far off. Pond decided to pick up where he left off. Another day.
So really great story, Jarvis. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this, particularly the characters. I think this is actually like really well written. I could picture a lot of this. Like this is pretty much on the same level as the character interactions between what are their names? The guy and
Jack and Spine.
Yes, Jack and Spine. Yes. Another older story of Jarvis's. Yeah, so I really like these characters. Have you like thought of them before?
Yeah, so these characters are from a really old comic book idea that I had, which it takes place in the same world as Super Cancer. And for y'all that don't know what Super Cancer is, I'm not going to.
I don't think you've ever talked about it
whatsoever.
Yeah, on the podcast.
But yeah, so basically it's a world where there are people with powers, and this character of Queen, specifically, is the trump card, right? So he was grown to be the strongest and to move and to do anything and to move anywhere, like the queen piece on a chessboard, but he does have his own personal faults, and that's what kind of gets him into trouble.
Yeah, I thought his characterization and we're endeared to him. We kind of get that he's a good guy. He's being persecuted, and he has this, the companion Fabiola, and we like start care about her a little bit just because we empathize with someone that's freaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
So my main like detractions in this is just there's a little bit of like confusion, particularly in the last half.
Yes.
That I'm not 100% sure of like exactly what's happening. So there's a couple of things where like I didn't realize Fabiola was dead. Like so there's a line, all she could do is scream and cry as they dragged her out of the container and threw her over. Like I wasn't sure. Like when I initially read that, I understood her as like getting taken out of the container that is her like jail cell, and then they just like threw her to the ground. And it wasn't until several lines later when Queen is saying, about killed companions, that I realized, oh, she was thrown out of the container, because I thought the container had been set down on the ground.
Interesting.
Because at the beginning, the operator, it says, so he dropped unit 725 and left. Yeah, the first line is, the crane dropped the container down in unit 724. So I assumed that meant that it was placed down on the ground.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was wondering if that came across, because what I did after there, I said 7 up and 24 across. And I guess it takes knowledge, because I had to look this up too, but each one of these shipping containers are about 8.5 feet tall. So if you stack 7 up, that's, I think, roughly got about 56 feet, which will kill you.
Yeah, well, what I didn't get there was that 7 up was vertical and not, like, I was picturing it like a grid.
I see. So you thought they were all laying on the ground, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so I think for me to understand that it would be 7 up vertically, I think you just need to add the third dimension of, like, 24 across, 4... what would you call it? 4
deep.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
and then 7 up,
or something like that. To understand it's in the air.
I would thinking about a second go through. I would definitely, that would probably be one of the things I focus on a lot, just because that is a very key part. Is the location of this container when it comes to Fabiola's death. And yeah, I was also a little iffy about if the audience, which is you, will completely understand where this container is, and also know what kind of a dock looks like and how shipping containers are normally stacked. Also, a simple fix would just say that the shipping container is 7 stories up.
Yeah, or at the in addition, when she gets thrown out, you could also add they threw the door open and threw her out down 7 stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, those things, and I think one reason why I didn't add like threw her down 7 stories is because at that point I wasn't sure like, ooh, should Queen save her? But then I realized, oh, you shouldn't, because there's a certain part of Queen that doesn't care about these companions.
Yeah, that was the thing I didn't fully like. It was so nonchalant. Like I didn't even realize that it had happened. Basically,
oh, that she died. Yeah.
And then the other thing that was confusing to me was exactly what was happening with their powers. Yeah, so there's a thing with the gum, right? So I assume that the dampeners were keeping down the Queen's powers, making him not be able to use them. But like when Pawn is there, he's like conjuring the thing, and like I guess part of the twist might be that like that he was showing off that he actually could use his powers, but like it was more confusing. Because I didn't realize that was the twist.
Yeah.
Basically.
So on that, I think one thing that could definitely fix that is so in the beginning there was dialogue where Queen said, "Yeah, as long as this dampener's on, I'm as good as dead, but you know the effects will wear off in like a hour." And then later on, put down that the dampener has been dead for about an hour. Which is why, in that moment, he's able to conjure up the book.
The main thing to me was just being surprised that, like, Pawn didn't notice. And then that also, if he had his powers, like, if he had his full powers, I was like, why didn't he save Fab? Because, like, he's not, like, pretending anymore after that. Like, so she dies, and then, like, he talks a little bit more and pisses Pawn off, and then he activates his powers and, like, the fight starts. So I was wondering, like, why didn't he... I thought that, you know, after the fight started, that it would have been like, oh, he actually did save her. Like, he just, like, did it remotely with his powers, because I don't know what his powers are.
Yeah, so, I think that just comes down to explaining that the dampener had just gone off for an hour, which is why he wasn't able to save Fab in that way. But, of course, you know, that is definitely, for me, the messiest part of the story.
So like the last other thing that I'm gonna like critique is that like the fight is also a little unclear, where I'm like just not quite sure like what the powers are doing. So I think just like spending, I mean obviously you know you were running out of time, but spending more time for like each action of like his powers came, all of his power came back to Queen. He blew the. You spend like a whole paragraph with like the cargo container exploding and Pawn not moving, like spend like a while with it. And then the last thing that was confusing is that you know Queen's like, haha, I've got you, Pawn, and then Pawn just like knocks him out immediately.
Yeah. That is what happened.
So I was like, yeah, so I felt like if that was gonna happen there, that moment needed to be longer, basically.
Oh, definitely.
Of like the reversal and like why he was so wrong.
Yeah, I think it honestly just boils down to me having a better grip as to the limitations of these people's powers, in a sense, especially within this one scene. So, I mean, that just takes me really sitting down to think about it. But if I were to actually go back and do it again, of course, I would make sure the location of the container is as clear as possible. I will want to spend a lot more time in the beginning between Fab and Queen, just to kind of set up that relationship. And then as soon as Pawn comes in, I would like to do a lot more with Pawn, because as of right now, he's just standing there. Make Fab's death a lot more vivid, and then just really work with how the ending's going to kind of play out. If you got 30 minutes, you get 30-minute work. So.
Right. You know, I can't actually remember the last time you had like an action-focused story. Like you've had action in it, but they've always been like quick moments. So I'm wondering like what would it be if you wrote like a long fight scene?
A long
obviously
fight
broken
scene?
Up and not just like a long fight scene,
yeah.
Like a fight scene that lasted most of the story. Not like all the way through, because that'd get exhausting. Like you definitely would need dialogue and like stuff going on.
Yeah, but just a long
like action.
Yeah. The practice would be beautiful, which is why I think maybe I might have to pick that up and try it out. I know if I do that practice, then the very last scene will be a lot better, because it will be a trained pen instead of a amateur's form.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so moving on to other stuff. I really, as I mentioned, I really like these characters, and I love so many lines in here. Like you did a really good job with so many lines. Actually, just like even the characterization. Like I love when you describe Fabiola. She would remind you of a young librarian, rounded glasses, and then you have the parentheses that are cracked now, which is like, it's like indicative of the situation, and like it quickly characterizes what she probably like looks like.
Yeah.
And how she's been like roughed up, and she's out of her element. And there's a lot of quick characterization in there. I also like the world building and how it's presented. So like in that same paragraph, they finally caught him, Queen, a fairly handsome, curly, white-haired African American science experiment that created the U.S. government's Trump card in the war against enhanced criminals. So specifically, the line I like is, if his actions were made public, he'd be a hero. But a hero can't come from a petri dish, which I thought was so good, because it's like, I don't know, it communicates a lot, and it just sounds good too.
Yeah. And also, if you think, wouldn't you be angry if the strongest hero ever was created and like didn't work for it,
and it was the creation by the government,
by the U.S. government
and stuff?
Yeah, so it's like if like All Might just took a whole bunch of, let's just shot out with a whole bunch of steroids that gave him one for all. It just wouldn't work.
I mean, isn't that Captain America basically?
Yes, which is why Captain America isn't a true superhero. I'm saying that
he's not a true hero. Yeah,
people are angry. I can already hear them.
I think Scott might make me no longer part of the Doof cast.
Ooh, because you don't like Cap Amer?
Because I don't like the good boys. Also, Superman's not a real hero. Well, all right. And then there's also like brilliant turns of phrase. I love how Queen and Pawn are named that. Like at first, I wasn't sure what Queen was, just like ruler or something like that. But of course, when Pawn comes in, we're like, oh, chess pieces. Yes. And my understanding is, Pawn being a telepath, he does brain stuff to other people, and so he has all these soldiers. So like, oh, they're his pawns. I get it.
Yes, thank you for picking up.
Thank you. And then you have some other jokes in here that I'm like just now noticing, like caught behind enemy lines, like in chess,
yes, like in chess.
They're in lines. Yes, like in chess.
I'm telling you, when I was 13 and I came up with this idea of Queen, it was nothing but just chess jokes through and through.
Yeah,
and I'm very happy that I've kept all those things in my mind all these years, because nothing's better than a good chess joke.
Nothing at all. Yeah. And moving on to just some more dialogue stuff, I really love Queen flips the page and fixes the glasses he didn't have before. If I had a penny for every companion you've killed, Flip, I'd be eating the best jawbreaker in the world right now. It's so good. Just like it, because it's like it's a normal saying, right? But it characterizes him so much that like that's the candy of choice. That's what the pennies would buy him. It's not that he'd be rich. It's that he would have
best jawbreaker,
enough money to buy the best jawbreaker. Which, who knows? Because it's a jawbreaker, it's a small amount, which is like makes it more modest, I guess. But it's also like, if the best jawbreaker costs $1, right? That's still 100
companions
dead. Yeah, which is probably not how many were actually killed. But
I was actually thinking that the best jawbreaker would be a classic 25-cent. Thus far, I guess in canon, Pawn's killed 25 of his companions, which are real numbers, man. He's really putting them up there.
But yeah, I really like this. I really love these characters. I wanted to see them continue talking. I wanted to hear their background. I wish Fabiola could have survived a little longer and we could have find out a little bit more about her.
I'm really glad that I kind of wrote it, because it is something that's really been on my mind for a little bit. And yeah, same. I would, if I were to take a shot at this idea for a second time, maybe not this scene itself, but in the future, I would definitely want to get some non-action bits and then also get some heavy action bits. So yeah, I don't know. I'm very proud that I wrote it, and I'm glad that all my chess puns came across.
I think you already covered what you would change and what you learned. But yeah, actually, despite the confusion at some points, like I really enjoy this, and this is actually one of my favored pieces of yours, just because the characters are so fun. And
the real question on my mind is, Matthias, how did your writing go?
It went well. I came up with the idea pretty late, and it took me a while to like actually have it executed right. There's definitely stuff that I already know, some stuff I would improve and expand. Yes. And I think this is one of those things where like I needed to think about this for like a couple days before I started writing, but instead I thought about it for like 30 minutes.
Solid.
So I think, you know, I already know that getting a better understanding would improve this, but at the same time, I think what I did have is fairly well executed. So I'm looking forward to reading it.
I'm looking forward to hearing about it. All right, well, first and foremost, tell me what the title of it is.
The title is supposed to be evocative of a article online or something like that. So it's called "What Happened to Gilbert Brown on November 23rd?" Huh, that's weird. In a laboratory at Johns Hopkins University, a graduate student, Gilbert Brown, refocuses the lens on his microscope. It's late, and he is the only one in the lab, which is too cold, his coat wrapped tightly around him. But now, Gilbert does not feel the cold, because something strange is happening. The view of the camera in the laboratory, placed there simply to deter intruders that would steal the expensive scientific equipment, can just make out Gilbert shifting from clutching at his coat to complete focus on the slide. In 43 minutes, the camera will record Gilbert's death. Gilbert's phone is recording, and picks up a slight change in his breathing rate. Gilbert was known to use recorders to take his own notes. Friends of his report that his handwriting was illegible, even to himself, and he didn't trust word processors anymore, if he didn't have to, on account of his final lab project 3 semesters prior having been accidentally deleted. Because of his experience, Gilbert is in the habit of talking out loud, one of the reasons he is alone in the lab at night. Now, it picks up the observations that will lead to discoveries that will shake the world and shatter his mind. It won't leave my field of view. There is a pause as he uses the microscope. Context. Sample is a meteorite from my backyard, a tiny one, approximately 4.3 millimeters long, one of the billions that fall from the atmosphere across the Earth every hour. Sample was collected by placing a box with a white sheet at the bottom and waiting to see the fallen space specks stand out against the sheet. Sample was not out of the ordinary. I have not had the materials tested yet, as doing so damages it, and I wanted to observe it before running destructive tests. This observation is for a standard meteorite survey study for Professor Chanikov's Physics 5340 course. Gilbert leans back in his chair, taking out his research journal. He speaks as he writes. There is a blotch on my sample. It takes up 1/4 of one face of the sample, which is roughly cubical. The existence of a blotch, or of the cubic shape of the sample, is not unusual. Normally, both occur in nature, naturally. However, Gilbert checks the microscope again, as if to confirm something he does not believe is happening is still happening. The blotch it's a color. It's not green. I don't know how to describe it. Well, actually I do, but it's not possible because it's not green. It's yellowish blue. A mix of yellow and blue, but not separate colors. It's one color, and it's not green. It's a blue that's yellowish, or a yellow that's bluish, and that's not weird enough. It won't leave the view of the microscope. The sample is always in view. It's in the center of the slide, and yet when I move the view of the scope to one side, all the way to the edge of the slide, I can still see it. It's not even in the same spot on the scope, so it's not on the lens. If I move the view down, it shifts to be at the top of the field, but it's always within view. He backs out from looking through the lens, ducks to the side, and checks the slide visually. He barks out a single laugh. The scope isn't even over the center of the slide. He leans back and drags a hand across his face. God, I sound crazy. His breathing is faster than normal. He seems to notice this and takes a few long breaths, ducking his head down and out of sight of the camera. Muffled by the angle of his body, we can hear him say, "Okay, think, Gilbert. This is weird, but you'll figure this out. Scientific method, right? Seek hypothesis, then seek to falsify it. Easy." He straightens and is in view again. He carefully unsecures the slide and brings it to another microscope across the laboratory. Hypothesis. Something is wrong with his microscope. His voice is nonchalant but betrays a tremor of nervousness. Even though colors that you can't describe aren't something that can physically happen, microscope or not, it takes 9 minutes for Gilbert to boot up the microscope, edit settings, and place a slide. He carefully places his eye on the viewfinder. "I can see it." His voice is tense. It seems to not have changed, so it's not the microscope. He scrolls the view. It's doing the same thing, staying in my view even when it shouldn't. What the hell? I'm zooming in, but it won't change size. It's not changing, it's just there, with that same wrong color. He turns to write in his journal, but the moment he leaves the microscope's viewfinder, he screams and falls back out of his chair. His hands clutch at his face, at his eyes. "Get out of my vision! You're there! I can't see you! Get out! Get out!" His breathing, fast, gasping breaths are heard across the room. "It won't leave my view! I can still see it in the center of the slide! It's right there!" He points, but his arm continually wavers, pointing at different places in space. "What the fuck? That's not possible! No, it's not!" He scrabbles and gets up. He approaches the microscope hesitantly, shying away from it like it's a snake that's going to inject him with venom. He notices his hand shaking. His laughter echoes in the lab, and it sounds old, among the beeps and churning of the scientific equipment. A sound that has lasted 1,000 years. "This is silly," he says to himself between the hiccups of laughter. "This is crazy. Oh God, why is it so wrong?" He goes to his phone, and even though he turns away from the slide, we can hear him say, louder and louder as he approaches the phone, still recording, "I can see it, I can see it, I can see it." He does not stop the recording as he presses the call application on his phone. He dials 911. As soon as the ringing should begin, we instead hear static. Gilbert appears to hear something else. He pulls the phone away from his ear. No. That's it. That's the sound. That's the yellow-blue. I can hear it. He drops the phone and puts his hand over his ears. No, stop. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to. Get out of my head. It's all changing. It's all falling away, like a rip in a curtain, and I'm seeing what's on the other side. I can hear it. I can. Everything is the same over there. He's crying. In a fit of panic and an attempt to get the sound to stop, Gilbert stomps on the phone, shattering its screen and stopping the recording. The recording was recovered for this report. The rest of the scene proceeds in silence. His hands are in his hair, grasping at roots, gripping them tight enough that strands break off in his fist. He curls up into a ball and does not move for 3 minutes. He rolls back and forth. After another minute, we can see him speaking to himself again, an argument that increases in fervor, until he hits himself. He hits himself in the head again and again, until finally he comes to a decision. He stands, and the movement is languid, almost drunk. He staggers to his research papers. His lighter, which he has never brought out in the lab before, comes out of his pocket. The papers, crumpled in one hand, catch flame before they are tucked under the desk. The fire grows, and Gilbert Brown sits in front of it, slowly rocking back and forth, until the flames obscure him. The microscope where the slide sits is consumed 23 minutes later. To this day, it is unclear why the sprinkler system did not activate. When the flames spread beyond that laboratory, to the rest of the wing, the sprinklers in other rooms did activate, though they did too little to prevent all damage. The flames beyond the lab were controlled, but the labs in the laboratory burned on. The official release statement from the United States Federal Bureau of Investigations determined that Gilbert Brown was overstressed. Gamma radiation from the sample damaged his eye and gave him hallucinations that led to a final psychotic break. This is their statement, even though Gilbert was known by friends and family to be happy, if odd. Gamma radiation, nor any other kind of damage to the eye, has never been known to cause hallucinations, as Gilbert described, and his autopsy report has not been released. It takes 2 hours for the firefighters to put out the flames in the lab. Gilbert's sample was never recovered.
What a great story. Matthias, it's this nice mix of this kind of eerie feeling. I'm getting like heavy Frankenstein vibes from it. I really loved it. Could you just tell me a little bit about where this idea is really coming from?
Well, a couple of things. This is basically, well, I'm sure like there's been actually a lot of stories that have done this idea and like executed it way better. So like I've never read it, but The Color Out of Space, which is a Lovecraftian story, which is about meteorite that lands, but I actually don't know what happens in it, other than it says The Color Out of Space, so I assume there's a cosmic horror color, so I should probably read that. And of course there's been plenty of other like going mad upon seeing something, but specifically the for me, like using, like I wanted to have the character look at something and have to, in something silly, basically falsify like all of science to this person and like ruin their life. And this is not exactly how it turned out. Like I wanted it to be like all of science is wrong, or actually, you know, something weird is going on instead. Like the universe is actually unknowable, and that's horrifying.
Okay.
But
so you were going for a much more, as you said, a Lovecraftian-esque vibe to it.
Yeah, a little bit, but basically I really struggled to think of like what actually Gilbert would be saying, and I didn't just want to be like, oh, he sees something and doesn't tell anyone, and we just like see his reactions, because it wouldn't be as interesting. So basically, I that's why I settled on a color that doesn't make sense. And recently,
and one that's stuck on him.
Yeah, like it went into his eye, basically.
Yeah.
The specifically colors. There's actually I read some stuff recently about how colors are actually super weird and like don't make sense. There's actually multiple colors that we see that don't like make sense, basically. Like the color maroon, which is red and blue, right? Mixed together, right? Red and violet, actually.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, on the color spectrum, the spectrum is like it's a line, right? And red is on one end, right? Because you have infrared, that's the next step in that direction, and then you have ultraviolet in the other direction, and they're at opposite ends, right? So like other colors, you can mix them because they're actually like orange, right? Is like yellow's like in the middle of the spectrum, and red is on one side. So like when you mix the two, right, you have orange, and that's just in between. On the color spectrum, red and violet never touch. Their wavelengths are, violet's wavelength is it's much shorter, and red's wavelength is much longer. Like a material might be made of like two substances that reflect like half of it is made up of one substance that reflects red light, and the other reflects violet light, right? And so your brain needs to be able to like see that, but it can't like see individually like all the tiny specks of each color, right? So what it does is it averages those together, and that's how we usually get other colors, right? It's like we're averaging all of the colors in a given spot together to get a certain wavelength. However, the average of violet and red light is green, right? It's green light. Like green's right in the middle, basically. The thing is, like, it's actually really disadvantageous for us. Like, I don't know if you've been outside, but a lot of things are green, right? And
a whole bunch of things.
It wouldn't like
most things. Even.
Yeah, exactly. And green is like a real color that exists, right? So basically, you have two things. You have green light, which is its own thing, and violet and red light together that both have the same average wavelength. And your brain's like, that's shitty. Like, that doesn't make any sense. This is bad. If something is both violet and red, that means it's probably like poisonous or something. We need to be able to tell. And so basically, it's one of the few exceptions where the brain actually constructs another color that is like not real in the world. And that's maroon. Anyway, that's just one science thing. I probably spent too long on that. And the other thing is that yellow and blue can't, if they mix, they become green and stuff like that. So I basically for this, I just searched impossible color and I looked at stuff, and it doesn't make sense for there to be something like a reddish green, you know, like actually red and actually green, or actual yellow and actual blue, because they mix into to other stuff. Apparently there was a study where like someone could actually see yellowish blue in 1983. I didn't actually read the article. I just skimmed that and I used the idea. So I need to actually to
read these articles.
Yeah, because it's weird. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think going back on the story, right? One of the great things about this story that I found is that you do a really great job of slowly letting us see where we're going and this descent into madness. Like as soon as the main character kept talking about seeing it in the center of the lens, I just automatically knew, oh, it's gonna get in his eye. And as soon as it did, I was just, I don't know, it just really struck this strange chord in me, because I never want something just like stuck to my eye. That seems like the ultimate in annoyance, and of course it drove this character insane and started a fire. But no, that's just a really great aspect that I really liked about it. Also, the setting I found is very different in a sense to what I'm used to seeing from you. I don't know if I've ever seen you do a lab type thing, unless it's either zombies or virus. So
sure, yeah. Well, like one thing, if I were to go back, one of the things that I would do, obviously, is spend more time of like what's actually happening. What I wanted to happen was that basically this becomes like a tear in his perceptions, and like it grows, and like he like sees the world as it actually is and not how our perceptions filter it, which doesn't make any sense, because to fathom what the world is, you need to have something that converts into something that you can fathom. Like you need eyes to see the world, and eyes construct the world in a certain way, right? Yeah, so as I said, the main thing I would do is actually come up with what is actually happening, and just use that to characterize his fall into madness. I meant it to go a little bit slower, but I started running out of time and space, and so yeah, I skipped a step. I wanted there to be like one more big step of like escalation.
Yeah, because I feel with something like this, a key thing that needs is time, right? Like this descent into madness should be slow over time, so we can really chew on each bit. And I feel that that's one of the things that was kind of holding me back, in a sense, is that it all felt very expedient, which makes perfect sense. I mean, you have 30 minutes to write it. It completely makes sense. But I want to see that slowness when it comes to writing this, and also just in the pacing itself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's that's the story.
Oh. Did you learn anything at all?
Well, one thing that I was doing that I don't normally do. Well, I mean, I do it sometimes. Is I was writing it from the perspective of someone viewing it through cameras and stuff like that, and it was pretty subtle. But it was. I think I would, in retrospect, add like some more stuff like from the narrator, like more speculations and stuff like that. But it was enjoyable of just like. Especially the storytelling way of like the narrator knows what's going to happen in the future, and that like they know that Gilbert's going to die and things like that, and so let me play around with the narration, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think by you playing around with it, that it quickly became like one of the coolest parts about it. So overall, really great job, Matthias. I really loved this one.
Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to the listener stories section.
All right, so first and foremost, yes, a lot better. Let's go ahead and say thank you to every single last soul that submitted this week. As you know, without you submitting, there's no us. Literally, if 1 week no people submit, our atoms will deconstruct. So this lovely go, we will be reading from stories by, drumroll please, Calanero 985, It's All Uphill, Kyrgyzstan, Kippos 21, and Paradox.
Yeah, that's right. So, thank you to everyone that submitted, but of course we only have time to talk about 5 stories a week. However, do remember that every single time that you write, your chance of getting selected
gets super boosted.
Goes up as well. So, We are going to heavily spoil these stories as we talk about them, so please pause this recording, go to the thread for episode 44 and read the stories by these people, because they're worth reading without being spoiled.
So please go do that. We'll be here waiting for you on hand and foot for you to come back. All right.
Sure.
So now that you're here, let's start with our first story by Calinero 985, named "The Booth at the End."
Yeah, so this is a cool, slow, character-focused story. We have this character going into this diner, and it's going to their booth, which they just come there often enough that it's theirs. They used to come here to grade papers, but now they just do it just to get away from it all for a minute. We really get their understanding that they're really stressed out and a little bit depressed and kind of pressed down by all of their years of well, only 5 years of teaching, but still, like, this is a treat to treat themselves to a burger and fries, which is, oof, a little
I mean,
disappointing.
if it's a good burger and fries, let's be honest.
Maybe.
But it doesn't seem like it's too good.
But they are sitting there, and then we have this whole build-up of, like, this is their place, their, relaxing time, and then the camera kind of, like, pans up,
Yeah,
is what it feels like, to, an older man comes in and sits in their booth, and, like, is really, like, I belong here kind of thing. There's this fun dialogue. Basically, the old man is mysterious, but hands our main character, Marcus, a envelope holding $50,000, and Marcus is obviously shocked and is like, what's going on here? And the man just wants Marcus to basically just change some grades and do some stuff into the school system. And Marcus is, like, a little bit against it, but we're like, yeah, come on, Marcus is totally gonna take it. Like, there's not a shadow in our mind that he's gonna take it. He's desperate. Yeah, and he says, I can't do it. It would be a violation, but, like, that's just, he just has to say that, basically. Yeah, and so there's this really big feeling of, like, Marcus is obviously, like, out of his depth. We kind of understand the trajectory of the story. Marcus is going to do this. There's going to be challenges. He's going to get in too deep, etc.
It's going to be a domino effect.
Which I thought was really interesting. He ends up looking at the money.
He ends up opening it and taking a little peek, which means that he instantaneously has to do everything that the letter says. But overall, I really, really like this story. If not for the fun dialogue towards the second half, then I really love the time that we spend in this character's head. So yeah, I just really like a lot of the voice that is being used. In a sense, I really like where it starts off. It starts off with the diner. It starts off with the booth. And then that naturally leads into these flashback moments. But at the same time, they execute it in a way to where you don't forget where you are. And then later on, when we snap to the present, it feels very natural, feels very warranted. Yeah,
okay. So you're talking about the structure then. Yeah, I like that too. What criticism can we give?
I will say, as soon as the old man kind of sat down, I knew exactly where the story was going, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I do believe that the ending, or at least the trajectory of a lot of stories, should be unexpected yet inevitable. But at the same time, I find it fine if you know where it's going.
It felt like a good first chapter, but it's like the more interesting stuff is later on, and I was even more interested in that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel that, at least for me, it would have been nice to get a better feel of this old man, even though we are given a lot. But as it stands right now, I'm not really sure what this deal kind of is. And I would have liked to get a lot of hints as to where this story is going to go from the interaction between the main character and this older man. But that's just me.
Sure, yeah. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this night, and I love, the problems that the main character is facing, and how this is clearly, like, a bad solution, but, like, they have to take it because things are so bad. So, but yeah. So let's move on to the next story by It's All Uphill. Brood. So this story starts off with with already being tense. Basically, these characters are at a restaurant. The main character is one of two daughters of this mother, and the three of them are at a restaurant. The mother is arguing with the other sister. Our main character, Asa, I'm gonna say Asa. Yeah. Asa is like really like she feels like we definitely relate to this feeling of almost unbearable psychic pain from like having attention brought to you by like people next to you, you know, fighting. Like we've almost certainly had that, even if it wasn't like someone that was specifically with our group, but maybe like someone else next to us was having an argument. We're like, oh god, they're doing it in public, kind of thing. And so we get the picture that the mother is like super overbearing, and the other Asa's sister is kind of rebelling. Asa has learned their coping mechanism, which is just like to keep their head down and to do whatever they need to do. And we have this big section where Asa is like, oh, my parents aren't abusive, because abusive people, you know, hit people and hurt them physically and stuff. This isn't abuse, where it's like clearly like they know, they're just trying to pretend that it's not. And so we like empathize with her a lot. And basically, the sister like leaves and abandons Asa to having to deal with her mother, even though Asa is trying to communicate without communicating that she actually needs help.
But yeah, overall, I really, really loved it. I think my favorite part about it was honestly the realness that I felt in a lot of the interactions. You know, not to reveal too much about my own personal life, but I don't know, this story definitely like really hits home, especially in the seat of Asa that the story really sits in, and how all this sensory is really coming in. And like it feels very natural when her natural way is just to keep her head down, but even that doesn't work. So yeah, I don't know, I read through it and I was just glued to it.
The parts there's at the very beginning, it's a little confusing because you know, given that we're in the head of a main character, we sort of expect that any argument and stuff like that the main character is going to be participating in. And so I was confused for reading it multiple times to understand that it's the mother and the other sister that are arguing, and not that both the mother and the sister are arguing with the main character. So there's probably a couple of things that could be done there just to clear that up. Even probably just like stating that outright, of like they were arguing again or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that I definitely had the same issue with it. It was for me, it was kind of like a slow start, because I was trying to figure out in a lot of ways exactly what is happening. But definitely, like, after the first quarter of it, all that information is given to you, and then the rest is just a huge ride.
Yeah, but even with that, I of course, like, really, well, once I understood what was going on, it started being a lot better. There's a particular section about in the middle, right after Asa, you know, thinks about her parents totally not being abusive, because she knows people who were abused, and her parents aren't like that because they don't hit people. She, like, avoids the conclusion of that, which is, like, actually, yes, you know it, by describing her soup, like, in vivid detail. I'm actually just going to read out loud because it's really, really good. I'll just start in the paragraph above. Abusive parents hit their children and lock them away. Abusive parents hit their spouses. Abusive parents left bruises under long sleeves. Her parents weren't that. She took in a deep breath and looked back down at her soup, letting Mal and her mother fight it out. She watched the thick, red liquid swirl around in shapes as the spoon passed through, focusing on the subtle shades as light hit the surface at different angles. Watching lighter shades from spirals, vortices, whirlpools, focusing on the way the center stayed fresh and flowing, but the edges coagulated. Focusing, to ignore the fact that she could feel the eyes staring at the table, at her.
So good.
That's beautiful imagery, and it's also like you can absolutely. I mean, we know how soup works, and so we can also picture, you know, that coagulation. So I thought that part was a beautiful moment in the story.
Definitely, yeah. So thank you very much for the great story. It's all uphill.
I also, just one more thing on that image. I like how it's red liquid, so it's something. It reminds you of blood. and I'm not entirely sure what the symbolic meaning of that is, but it certainly sounds cool.
All right, so next up is Kippos 21 with Not Me.
Yeah, so this is a short story, and Kippos says that, that they couldn't get their creative juices flowing this week that much, and that's totally okay. That happens. I mean, they should pat themselves on the back for still doing the right thing. That's right. So in this story, the main character is weary. There's been a drain on their soul. Their soul has kind of like been draining away to fill up something that's not them. It's something that has taken their place, like a doppelganger. It walks where they walk. It sleeps where they slept, and it loves the people that they love. We're not entirely sure why this happened, but we see that the other thing, the thing that's not them, is actually like a nicer, happier person, and it's been kind of taking care of the character's loved ones better than they did. And so the main character kind of feels like they need to give up just to make things better. But it's also like we're not entirely sure if that's really what's happening. Maybe these things are happening now, but will it do so later? It's a lot of mystery here.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that mystery does it justice, because something like this can be applied to so many things. So I read it twice, right? First time I was reading it very literally to what the words were on the page, and of course I liked it. It was written very well. But the second read, I started to think if it was more metaphorical, right? If this other person is still you, but it's the process of change. And it also worked. So, I don't know. I think a cool thing that I found about this story is that it can work in different lights, in a sense, just based off of the closed reading that you have.
Yeah, that occurred to me too, that this is actually like the past version of the main character looking on their future version, which is definitely another option. Not that much to critique here. I think Kippos could probably tell a lot of it, which would just be like to expand it and stuff. But that happens.
Or give me something concrete.
Sure. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is by Kyrgyzstan, which is Groaning with the Flow, which is kind of gross title.
Disgusting.
So the main character is Chloe, and she's living in a kind of post-apocalypse sort of thing.
With all the zombies.
Yeah, this is kind of a humorous take on it. We start off, talking about toiletries and how her family was like a doomsday prepper, but didn't expect so many family to survive, basically. So Chloe has to go to town and get some toiletries, and we start, we see the zombies. But it turns out that they're not like normal zombies. Instead, they are like this hive mind that only eats people that don't conform to their emotions. So like the hive mind will like have different emotions at different times. Like they'll all be sad at the same moment, and they'll be kind of like acting it out a little bit. Or they'll be like happy, and so you have to like pretend that you're feeling the same emotion they are. There's some, and that's really funny by itself. And then there's some like nods and suggestions that it might be like a millennial thing. Like they hold onto these long dead phones, but it's that theory in universe is treated kind of like it's silly. But basically, Chloe has to she gets the toiletries, and then on her way back, one of the zombies like starts she acts the wrong way. And they start chasing her, but then she just runs around them and gets home okay.
That is exactly what happens.
It's fine. And we end with another joke, basically. So it's a nice little story, and I'm sure there's a lot of like analogies you could actually pull from this, and like wonder what these zombies are supposed to represent.
Also,
and stuff like that.
It has really great world building. In a sense, like, I mean, I think my favorite part, of course, is just the way that these zombies act, because I haven't really ever seen that.
I mean, I thought it was super entertaining.
Yeah, it was super entertaining, and I'm also thinking of, like, the implications of, like, how closely will you have to follow these emotional vibes? Like, what if they're like, could they all feel bittersweet, and then you have to figure out how you express that? I don't know. But either way, I think like the world building is really great. I think the character of Chloe is solid. And yeah, I think I really like reading it.
I guess my only critique would be that I think there could have been like a little bit more done to suggest what the zombies can represent. And because it seems like the theory that we are presented with, the millennial thing, is kind of rejected. So yeah, maybe just something nodding us in a direction of what we should be thinking there. Definitely. Okay, so the next story we're going to talk about, is that the last? Yes. The last story we're going to talk about is by Paradox, which is called Oversight. So in this, we kind of understand that there are these two godlike beings or angel-like beings or devils or something, divine on some level. But they're actually like these administrators, and they're dressed in these suits, these two women, and they're kind of opposites of each other. We kind of get the feeling that the one that we're seeing through her eyes, she's the good side, and the other one is the bad side, basically. Although they have little touches of kind of a yin and yang thing going on. And so we kind of get the picture that the good one, what their job is doing like subtle good things in the world, like advancing people, making sure that smart people are born that will change the world, and that bad people are not, or something like that. Or rehabilitated or something. And this is quick to summarize, but it's actually like really complex and interesting. A lot of interesting imagery. But basically, about halfway through the story, the other one, the evil one, like does one of her moves and then steps back and is like, "Do you want me to get you a drink?" And then we realize that she's unleashed a plague that's going to decimate the half of the population. And,
tens of millions.
And the good one is like kind of freaked out by this. Not necessarily, we don't really get the feeling that she's like, "Oh no, lives will be lost and all those poor souls." It's just that like it's a loss against her progress, or I guess what she's trying to do, and she's really stressed out by this, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I really dug this story, mostly because I just really like reading stories that take place in this kind of demonic lands. I mean, one of my favorite, well, I wouldn't say favorite, but one of the shows that I really like watching is Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. And it is a Adult Swim kind of sitcom-esque thing, and it's just about demons spending time in this office building, and it's really fun. This, on the other hand, isn't nearly as fun, because it's taken very seriously. And I think that's definitely why I like it so much, because as you said, there's so much complexity to this kind of job that they are doing, and just how they set up their chessboard, right? And they even said how in the past they used to create messiahs and prophets, but that didn't really pan out. So I don't know, the attention to detail, the world building, and the willingness to take its time just really makes this a really good do the right thing story for me.
Yeah. My critiques would be that some of the higher level motivations I didn't really get. Like, I didn't actually realize that this was like a conflict between the two of them until the plague, basically. I didn't realize that they were adversaries. I assumed that they were both doing the same thing and trying to better the world. And so yeah, it's just that like I'm not entirely sure what exactly their motivations are. Like, why are they, like, I don't know what the win condition for this main character is. So stuff like that, I think the story would have really benefited to know, like, what is at stake here. Why is this character doing this? Like, they need to be subtle but also not too subtle. And so yeah, I was just curious as to what exactly is going on. But I mean, it's just that I was interested in the mystery that was set up. So yeah, we'd love to hear more about
if not a continuation, then a beautiful rewrite. But thank you very much, Paradox, for sending your story in.
So that's all the stories that we are going to read this week. But of course, we want to celebrate everyone else that wrote as well. So thank you so much to Calinero985.
Thank you to It's All Uphill.
Kippos21.
Thank you, Dravonio.
Thank you to Calsubalu V2.
Thank you, Sarah Penguin.
Thank you, Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you, Ace of Swords.
Thank you, Mizy1.
Thank you, Paradox.
Thank you, Meteora22. Thank you to someone that sent in by email, Pizza Hot Dog Lover. which I forgot to post earlier and also forgot to reply to the email, but I'm going to do that before this episode comes out. So yeah, if you don't have a Reddit account, you're also free to email us. And we entered it into the drawing and we read it in time. I did not post it in time. But yeah.
Yeah. And also, real quick, we're also going to say thank you to all the people that commented this week. Half of the job of doing the right thing is to also comment, and we are trying to get better with that ourselves, but we just want to give a little shout out to people that are going above and beyond for this community.
So first I want to thank Haunt of the Heron, who didn't write the story this week, but did take time out of their week to comment on people's stories. So I really, really appreciate that. Thanks to Kasublu V2 and Ace of Sword as well. And then to Dravonio and Paradox. And thank you to Kyrgyzstan and MyC1. KPost21 and Sarah Penguin as well, and to everyone else who is going to comment on the next thing.
Exactly. So thank you so much to everyone that does this. If you want to know exactly how can you see these words ahead of time, so you have ample time, you have a whole 7 days to get that story in. Well, the best way to find that out is by going to our Twitter, which is @RightThingCast.
Yeah, and of course the threads are posted every Fridays on /r/do the right thing on Reddit. Starting now, I've actually figured out how to schedule things in advance, so that actually should be coming out on Fridays starting from today. So
that's beautiful. Bada bing, bada boom. We're on schedule. And also, if you don't have a Reddit account at all, it's completely fine. You don't need to have one, really. But if you still want to send in that story, you can just go ahead and send us a good old-fashioned email at rightthingcast@gmail.com.
That's right. And if you want to give us some support, a great way to do that would be to go to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating and review. You could be the very first person to do so.
Ooh. And also, on the same idea of support, if you have maybe $1 lying around, maybe $5, maybe $10, hey, maybe $20 around your house, just go ahead and throw it our way by going to the Doof Media Patreon. By helping us out and helping them out, you help us make what you want to listen to. So it's a cycle of helping that's all funded by that $1 that you forked over to us.
Yeah, that's right. The Doof the Right Thing contest is only possible because of the wonderful generosity of our patrons. So it's thanks to you guys that we're able to give back to the community.
So please, if you can, do.
Yeah, if you donate at the $20 level or above, you will join the Council of Doof. So everyone at that level is, when they first join, are able to request that there's a Doofcast episodes based off of whatever they want, so long as it's about the length of a movie, right? So short stories and movies and miniseries and stuff, no TV shows because those take way too long. But you're able to request a special episode based off of whatever you want. Starting next month, we're going to have the Council of Doof, which is all of the $20 patrons and above together. They're going to vote on one Doofcast episode a month, just about. So that's a new feature we're putting in just to give back to the wonderful patrons that continue to donate at that high level every month. So if you are already donating or you haven't started donating but you want to have an episode dedicated to whatever you want, consider donating at that level.
Exactly. So Matthias, why don't you tell me a little bit as to what's happening in Doof?
Yeah, so the first and biggest thing, obviously, is that we have that new podcast. We mentioned it last week, but we'll mention it again. It's the Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality Analysis podcast. We Want More has joined the network, and we're so thrilled to have them. I'm almost caught up. I've been speeding through it, and you can too. Which is, it's easier for me because I've already read Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, and I'm really enjoying what Stephen and Brian are putting together.
So, to watch this podcast, do I have to have read the book?
I think yes, you should read the book. But it's also online, and it's a pretty easy read. So, yeah, and of course there's all the other amazing podcasts on the network. And one of the biggest things is Deep in Pack is going to be ending soon, and they'll be finishing off that in very early March, the first week of March, with a 24-hour live stream,
which we're a part of.
All Packed Up. Yes, and you'll be able to donate at that time, and all the proceeds will go to a youth homelessness charity. And we're going to be participating there. We're actually going to be doing a special episode of Do the Right Thing that's actually going to be pact themed. So we're very excited about that, and we'll talk about it more when we get closer. So,
exactly. So please
really cool
stay
stuff.
tuned for Do the Pack theme.
Yeah, just about. And of course, there's the next Do the Right Thing contest that will come up in April. So look forward to that as well.
Exactly. You get a whole new chance to take any story from any previous Do the Right Thing entry. You get a chance to edit it and send it back in for the lovely masses to read. So please do so. I mean, this is all for you, and this is for us. And it's a little fun thing to where we can collab over projects that we're proud of. And that's the whole point of Do the Right Thing, is finding something that you're proud of.
Next episode is going to be pretty special. So episode 45, it bothers me that they couldn't get it to episode 50. That would have been better and more rounder, but it's fine. I'm not mad. So episode 45, next one, will instead of me and Jarvis reading our stories, we're actually going to read the stories of those top 3 listeners.
Oh mon dieu.
Yeah, oh mon dieu. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that, especially because those are like polished stories and not our rough draft stuff that you and me do.
Fucking raggedy shit.
Okay.
2,000 word rough draft.
That's right. Okay, but in the meantime, let's find out next week's words. We'll still have the listener submitted story section, so you guys should still write next week, absolutely, even if Jarvis and I specifically don't read our stories.
Exactly. So next week's words are orange, befitting, synonymous, and request. Still a very weird draw this week, huh?
Yeah, so orange as in the color and the fruit orange. Befitting as in something that fits you, which is usually not referring to clothing, but like to characteristics. Mm-hmm. Like that name is befitting for you. Synonymous as in a word that is like another word. So
fast and speedy.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So, and then request. So I request, Jarvis, that you tell me a story using these words right now.
Well, I request, Matthias, that you give me the proper respect, because it is befitting to me. You and I sometimes have been synonymous with each other. Like 2 peas in a pod, except one pea is visibly larger and darker than the other.
Okay.
Or maybe we're just seeds in an orange, all citrusy and tight together, but we work in unison to create a very delicious vegetable that's actually mistaken for a fruit.
What?
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, okay. Fuck, I was too busy paying attention to your story. I request that you stop making fun of me, and work with me to give me a title that is synonymous with my rank, a title befitting of my nature, as powerful as the old William of Orange, who ruled England. That's a real fact. There's a guy, he was from the Netherlands, and then he ruled England, and then I'm going to be like him.
William of Orange.
So that's my great story, and I hope stuff like that will inspire y'all to do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Is that?